Welcome into the latest episode of Mac and Mose. Andy McNamara, joined as always by the editor-in-chief of GoDucks.com, Rob Moseley. We are here to wrap up Oregon's big 41-20 victory over the Utah Utes. It moves the Ducks back over the 500 mark. They're 5-4 overall. Second win in Pac-12 play this year. They are 2-4. And now just one game shy of bowl eligibility with 3 games to go. A rough stretch down the stretch for Oregon as they have to go up to Washington. Then they host a red-hot Arizona team, and then the Civil War, which it doesn't matter.
Right.
Records, throw the records out the window. It's the Civil War, and you never know what's going to happen. So that in itself is a huge reason why this was such an important win for Oregon. Once again, without Justin Herbert, we talked about the need for something good to happen to Oregon, maybe something out of the ordinary, a defensive touchdown, a bounce to go their way, for them to be able to sort of get over the hump with the true freshman quarterback running the show. And that's exactly what we got in this one. But before we get to that, I think Oregon's ability, they won the coin toss, they elected to receive, and then their ability to march the ball down the field, run the ball effectively, and get that early score to take a lead and then play from the front was a huge key in this game.
Yeah, I think it became clear after the game that Willie Taggart had to spend the whole week leading up to the Utah game trying to plant the seed of optimism and positivity in his players' minds that, hey, this is a team that was close to breaking through, that despite the 3-game losing streak, all was not lost, and that there were good things happening, and if you just string enough of those good things together, a win can happen, and it's not that unlikely. And so to have that reinforced right off the bat, I agree, a huge turn of events. Braxton Burmeister comes out, starts yet again at quarterback. Almost half his completions and half his passing yardage on the day was on that first drive, but he goes 3 for 3 for 20 yards, has a huge 3rd and long conversion running the ball to keep the drive alive, and then the touchdown to Cam McCormick. And all that sense of belief that Willie Taggart had been working so hard to try and instill, I think had to be reinforced at that point. And then you have the defense come and make a couple stops where they hold Utah to field goals rather than touchdowns, not to mention the big defensive touchdown by Oregon. And suddenly, yeah, by the end of the first quarter, all that hard work, I think, had paid off.
7-0 after the first quarter, and then the big play that we're speaking of, Ugo Amadi with really the play of his college career. He gets a tackle for loss, he forces a fumble, and then he returns said fumble 47 yards for a touchdown, all on the same play. Just a tremendous effort by Ugo. The fact that it was against his former teammate Darren Carrington, I'm sure that made it a little bit sweeter for a lot of Oregon fans out there. But regardless of who it was a critical play in the game because it gave Oregon a little bit of breathing room at the time. And I mean, that could have been a 14-point swing. You just don't know how Utah's drive would have gone. They were starting to move the ball a little bit. Carrington was effective outside of that one play. Caught 9 passes, the most any receiver has caught against Oregon this season. So they had some decent things going, but that really helped Oregon go into halftime with a little bit of momentum, and that was critical.
Yeah, and again, reinforcing things that Willie Taggart's been trying to instill with this program. Offensively, Burmeister completing a couple passes, getting things moving, but also just being able to run the ball, attacking the edges in the run game the way they did so successfully. And defensively, forcing those field goals was huge, but also finally getting a turnover. We talked a lot in the last couple weeks about how this is something they do in practice that just wasn't translating into games. And so here finally some carryover, some follow-through where Amadi comes in, makes the strip, scoop and score, and Autzen was never louder than on that play, except when after the review was announced and it was the play was confirmed as a touchdown for Oregon. I think it blew up even louder than when the play was happening itself. So, even the fans just getting to have fun watching Oregon football again after a trying couple of weeks. It was a fun afternoon in that way.
Defense really did their part as well, Oregon with that halftime lead, but then Utah gets the ball to start the third quarter. And as it turns out, Utah had the ball for almost the entire third quarter, but the Ducks were able to put a little razzle-dazzle together.
Yeah.
A big run from Tony Brooks-James that set up a short field, and then Charles Nelson with his crazy scramble. It was a design pass play all the way around, but as soon as he gets tripped up, you're thinking, oh no,
Yeah.
this is disaster, and he somehow is able to make the play. And I think the guy that probably doesn't get enough credit on this play is Jacob Breland, who had 3 defenders around him and was able to still get up, catch the ball, and then keep it secured all the way to the ground.
A play that wasn't even in the playbook as of Monday of last week. Charles mentions offhand on a radio show, he's done so much. He's played offense, he's played safety, he's been a special team standout as a freshman, covering kickoffs and punts. What hasn't he done? He mentions offhand, it'd be fun to throw a pass. So Willie Taggart schemes up a play. They practiced it once Tuesday.
And it worked.
And it worked. Based on how they practiced it, though, Charles thought he'd basically be uncovered because it was a reverse. He figured the defense would have flowed back the opposite way. No, instead, there's a couple guys there that stay home. One manages to trip him up. He stumbles. He manages to keep his feet, and then just lofts up a jump ball that Breland makes a play on. And Breland was a guy, too, who, again, a case of a player planting a seed with a coach. After coming out of the Stanford game where the Cardinal just threw up a couple of touchdown passes to big receivers and who were able to beat DBs for him, Breland said, hey, I used to do that in high school. Just throw me the ball. I'll go up and get it. And sure as heck, he goes up and does it in this game. In a crazy third quarter that included a wild touchdown for Utah, an offensive lineman laying on his back, catching a touchdown. And for the Ducks to put points on the board in the third quarter in the second half after not doing so for the last 3 games, yet another benchmark that hadn't been fulfilled that they were able to do and follow through. So just a whole lot of breakthroughs that way in this game.
By extending the lead too with that play, they really put the pressure on Utah, because not only are they playing against the scoreboard, but they're playing against the clock, and they had just a quarter to go. So they basically had to abandon the run game altogether and just pass the ball, which over the years has always worked into Oregon's favor, and we saw it once again. And then by getting the ball back, taking advantage of their depth. I thought this was the best game since Herbert went down, where, off air, if you will, I've been talking about this all season. I think the offensive line and the running back group is as good as it gets in the Pac-12. And for them not to just sort of, dominate at times has been frustrating. Well, the last quarter of this game, Tyrell Crosby was killing guys, and they were dominating, and they were taking advantage of Tony Brooks-James and Kenai Benoit, not just Royce Freeman. Royce piled up the yards. He had a couple 30-yard runs of his own. It didn't matter who was back there. The holes were wide open, and guys were running free.
This reminded me of who the Ducks were in that second half against Cal after Herbert got hurt, but they still kind of had their mojo because they were winning that game and just dominated the line of scrimmage both ways. And we saw that finally. But just because the losses started to pile up, that seed of doubt got planted, and I think that just hurt everybody's ability to kind of function in that dominant fashion and sort of acknowledge that, yeah, there still was a lot of ability on this team, that just because Herbert was gone didn't mean a win was impossible. And so again, Taggart instills that belief, and then they go out and play that way. And the D-line too. Jonah Moy, Jalen Jelks, Henry Mondo, those guys were just all over the place. So that identity that we thought could be there. But there were some new wrinkles too. Taj Griffin moves back to running back for the first time all season. He was able to attack the edges. This is a Utah defense that's traditionally very stout against the run, so it was very strange to see them lose contain that way. But Willie Taggart said he thought going in they were going to have a matchup with to use to their advantage with Oregon's speed, and they showed that off, attacking the perimeter with some of those run plays and really stretching out the Utah defense.
Yeah, that to me that's an even bigger deal for Oregon's offensive performance. Was Utah is certainly no slouch defensively. They were the number 3 team in the conference coming into this game. Very balanced across the board, but they didn't seem to have an answer on the edge when Oregon was able to bust it outside. And it was good to see. I think Willie Taggart, as you mentioned, trying to instill optimism. A week ago, you could see the frustration on the coaches' faces in practice, and I'm sure that trickled down. The players obviously saw it if we were seeing it. And I thought as a staff, they sort of flipped the script this week, or going into the week, to have that positive demeanor. and using more players. They utilized a lot of their skill guys on offense, as opposed to just feeding Royce the whole time. Taj makes an early appearance in this game. He didn't even play the game before. Right. So the coach's willingness to be flexible and maybe change up their game plan a little bit definitely worked into this victory as well.
No doubt about it. Yeah, it felt like kind of the whole program had its back against the wall a little bit after the 3 losses, and you mentioned it right off the top, just how important bowl eligibility is. I think everybody going in felt like, hey, if Herbert was healthy, sure, maybe this could be an 8 or 9 win team. And now we look back on the last few weeks and go, yeah, there's a couple of games there where he probably makes that kind of a difference, just being the caliber player he is. But baseline, I think everybody wanted to see this program get back to the postseason at least in the first season under Willie Taggart. It would have been really tough to go into the last 2 weeks of the year having to beat Arizona as well as they're playing right now, and then having to beat your rival. Oregon State would really have something to play for in that game, and so that would be a tough spot to be in. So, but here was a chance. This Utah game, this was a chance to get one, and so I think that they knew the opportunity was at hand and they embraced it. Everybody stepped up, coaches, players, everybody stepped up and took advantage of it. So again, just some breathing room now and just a sense, okay, you got to get one more. You got 3 chances to get one more. Herbert hopefully will be back soon. And that'll provide even more optimism there. But just a very welcome development to see the Ducks play the way they did in all facets.
Before we wrap this up, we probably don't talk about the defensive guys quite enough individually. Some great performances in this one. Once again, Troy Dye with 11 tackles, his 5th double-digit tackle game of the season. Arion Springs had 3 pass breakups in this one. Did a great job against Darren Carrington. There was one play where Utah basically put everybody on one side of the field. They isolated Carrington and Springs, and everybody in the stadium knew it was just going to be a one-on-one battle, jump ball in the end zone, and Arion won the battle. And that was early in the game, and I think kind of set the tone defensively. So it wasn't just Ugo; it was all those guys back there.
Matching up Tyree Robinson against Darren in the end zone. That's another adjustment we saw coming out of the Stanford game. There were those jump balls after the fact. Coaches said, hey, we probably need to look for a different matchup there. So you got a big receiver in Carrington. Robinson's a guy who's played corner, big framed guy, jammed Carrington at the goal line, didn't allow him to catch a pass in the second quarter, I think, as well as the Springs play. So another tweak there where a defender, defensive coaching staff came up with something different, and a defensive player stepped up and made a play.
Offense, we talked about Taj Griffin making an appearance. On defense, Brady Breeze got a lot of time at safety. Malik Young, Gary Baker came in and took some important snaps on the D-line. So again, on that side of the ball as well, the willingness to sort of go a little bit deeper in your depth, not necessarily out of necessity, but get those guys some reps, because as we come down the stretch, it's going to be important to have as much experience as possible with these 3 games left to go. Big one this week up in Seattle. Washington and Oregon. Washington, highly ranked, came into the season probably as the Pac-12 favorite. I don't know that that's really changed at this point. They put 70 on Oregon last year at Autzen Stadium to end a 12-game Oregon winning streak in the series. It's been a while since the Huskies have beaten the Ducks in Seattle, and I'm sure their fans have made them well aware of that. So this is going to be a hostile environment. Still don't know what the quarterback situation will be for Oregon this week, but it was definitely encouraging to see the team with the performance, 41 points, 10 more than they had accumulated in 3 games combined going into the Utah game. So it looks like the Ducks, at least offensively for now, are starting to figure some things out. Throughout the week, Rob and I will check in with the Quack Minute after practice. If you have any questions or comments for us, you can get to us on Twitter. I'm at McNamara UO, and he is at Duck Football. Until next time, we'll see you.